You're listening to Australia's #1 wine podcast, the Vincast. As we rapidly approach episode 100, quite a milestone, I would really appreciate everyone's support and putting the word out about the podcast. So please, anything you can do to share your enjoyment of this podcast, whether it be on social media like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or by going and leaving a rating and a review on the iTunes store, I would really appreciate it because it does help promote the podcast and gets more people listening and enjoying. And I've got hopefully something really exciting planned for episode 100. So please stay tuned and you'll find out more soon. On episode 96 of the Vincast, I chat with Sam Connew, a New Zealand-born winemaker who's never actually made a vintage in New Zealand, but now she makes some amazing wines in Tasmania with her Stargazer brand. Hello there, Vincasters. Welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Scaresbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. It has been really fascinating to see how much people have enjoyed last week's episode of the podcast with Sue and Roger from Living Wines. Had a number of really wonderful reviews on iTunes. Had a lot of people contacting me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that kind of thing, to show their appreciation to their fantastic story. I really did learn a lot. It was fantastic. And actually, this week's episode I also recorded whilst I was in Hobart recently with Sam Connew, and she has an amazing pedigree for winemaking in Australia. Although she wasn't actually born in Australia, she's actually from New Zealand. She spent many years working at Wira and has recently relocated to Tasmania, where she's making some really outstanding wines under the Stargazer brand. So we had a chat and found out her story. Stick around to the end to find out how you can get in contact with us to let us know if you did enjoy this week's episode. Sam, thank you very much for making some time whilst I'm here in Hobart, and thank you for welcoming me into your lovely home.
No problems at all, James.
And welcome on the Vincast. Usually I start every episode by asking my guest if they can remember if there was a particular moment, like an epiphany moment with wine that made them think about it in a different way, that sort of set them on the path to follow a career in the wine industry.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have a few epiphany moments. I guess the highlight, or the one which really set me on this path, was a tasting group that I was involved in through a wine bar that I used to work at in Christchurch in New Zealand.
Yep.
And the wine bar manager also used to work at a bottle shop and run tastings, which we used to go to. And it was if memory serves correctly, 1993 Artarangi Pinot. And that was really the start of it. And I thought, even at that point, when I was still doing my first degrees, that was kind of the point where I went, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Did you grow up in Christchurch?
No, in Blenheim.
Blenheim. Oh, so you're from Marlborough.
Yeah, but had nothing to do with the wine industry.
Considering the wine industry is so important to Marlborough, what other industries are there?
Well, there were other industries.
Right.
So this is back in the day, in the late 1980s, where the wine industry was really just starting off. So names like Hunters and Montana were the beginning of it all, I suppose, but it was really only the late 80s, early 1990s that it really started to go nuts. So back in the day, there was apricot orchards and asparagus and carrot, the huge horticultural industry in Marlborough, none of which exists anymore, of course. So
pull that out, plant vines.
Yeah, bit of a monoculture, which is quite sad in a way, because I think it's a lot more healthy to have various farms operating.
Unfortunately, the only visit I've made to New Zealand was to Marlborough. because at the time I was working for the company that owned Cloudy Bay.
Sure.
And so I went down for a wine event, but I did have a day off to kind of drive around and just Sauvignon Blanc vines as far as the eye could see.
Yeah.
And it did kind of depress me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I thought, how good could the wine possibly be if it's all just, and they all looked relatively newly planted, maybe 3 to 5 year old vines.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Marlborough now is it's over 22,000 hectares.
That's a lot.
So it's massive,
Yeah.
absolutely huge. And, there was nothing on that scale when I was living there. So, yeah.
And so what did you study in Christchurch?
Law degree and BA in political science and English literature.
Really? How did you get interested in that sort of stuff?
I was going to be a lawyer and take on the world.
Politician, maybe?
No, I was going to be a diplomat and work at the UN. Watched far too much LA Law and all of that kind of crap when I was at school, so I got deluded about what the legal profession was all about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But some of the friends you made at uni, maybe they were interested in wine. That's how you sort of got introduced to
I started working, so I worked in hospitality all through.
Right, okay.
My uni days, just to kind of, keep money in the bank. And I worked at this great wine bar in the Arts Centre in Christchurch, and that's how it all sort of started, really.
Okay.
It was, kind of pretty revolutionary at that point in time. I mean, we're talking the early 1990s, and they had over 70 wines available by the glass.
Wow.
So pretty groundbreaking. And obviously we had access to all of that. So just the whole food, wine thing, winemakers coming in to drop off deliveries, winemakers dinners, all of that kind of thing. I was like, this could be a pretty fun thing to do.
And the New Zealand wine was predominantly, what you were being exposed to, what you got
yeah,
sort of through yourself
fair
into?
amount of Mulla Turgau to start off with.
Is there much Mulla Turgau in New Zealand these
Not
days?
now, but back in that day, it was really before the Savalanche thing started to go crazy. So Mulla Turgau.
No offense to Mulla Turgau, but geez, you could pick much more interesting German varieties to plant.
But that's how Gießen started out. That was their cash cow to start with, was
Bulk
Mulla
wine.
Turgau.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Before they moved on to Sauvignon Blanc, like the rest of the country. So yeah.
Did you find
Happy
yourself connecting with any particular regions in New Zealand? Were you connected to Marlborough, having come from there?
Not really. I guess, that was one of the main motivating things after I did my postgrad in terms of moving to Australia, was the realisation that if I stayed in New Zealand, I'd pretty much, the odds of being stuck making Sauvignon Blanc were pretty high. And that wasn't really what I was excited about. So, yeah, Marlborough, not so much. And also I'd grown up there, so, that's that whole kind of small town mentality of can't wait to get away. It's a totally different place now to what it is then. Whilst it's still farming and it's, grape growing and all of that kind of thing, there is a cultural element that the wine industry brings to places, and certainly wine tourism is a big part of that in terms of, changing the whole feel of a place.
So you finished your studies and then said, did you actually start working in
No,
the legal
never
profession?
actually worked as a lawyer. Pretty much figured out
Did you
early on
disappoint
that I
anyone
wasn't
in
going to
that?
do it. Sorry?
Was anyone disappointed about that?
No, I think, my parents, or my mother was really supportive of me just doing what I wanted to do and whatever would make me happy. So, there was a certain point where she would introduce me to people as the world's most overqualified waitress. So that was pretty blunt and to the point.
Right.
But no, there was no kind of like, oh, you're not going to be a lawyer, that's a bummer type thing. It was just like, yeah, you got to do what makes you happy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was the decision? When was the decision made that you would kind of follow
I
that?
actually started when I moved across. So I finished my first degrees in 94, and then moved to Australia in 95, and was just working. I was in Adelaide staying with some friends there. It was kind of going to be the start of the big overseas experience. Was working in restaurants there, and then went back to New Zealand in 96 and did my postgrad at Lincoln.
In winemaking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, winemaking and
Viticultural
viticulture.
science?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And how was that experience, having worked in hospitality and, getting interested in wines to then actually kind of, particularly in terms of a scientific aspect, what was your experience as far as studying it? Did you get a lot of it?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just that immediate kind of click of, this is what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was really quite a small program at Lincoln at that time. I'm sure it still is. Great group of people, some great lecturers. And, it was fantastic. Loved it.
Mm-hmm. So whilst you were studying, did you work vintage anywhere?
Not whilst I was studying, but I was still working at this wine bar in Christchurch. It was kind of one of those places that you sort of can't quite let go of. So I was going backwards and forwards there for a while. But while I was there in 96, met this great couple from Oregon in the States, and they offered me a job at their winery, Elk Cove.
With Adam.
Yeah, with Adam Campbell. So it was his parents.
Yeah.
Pat and Joe.
I visited them. They're lovely.
Yeah, so that was my first vintage, actually, in 97, was at Elk Cove.
Far out.
Yeah, crazy.
You would have thought it'd be in New Zealand, but...
No, I've never actually done vintage in New Zealand.
Really?
No.
Wow.
So,
well, you heard it here, guys.
The one that got away.
So how was your experience in the Willamette?
Oh, loved it. Yeah.
Did you like Portland?
Portland is just the most. I mean, love that whole northwest area because I ended up going back in 2000 and doing another vintage at Beaufrere as well.
Oh wow.
So and
Mr.
subsequently,
Parker's.
yeah, and subsequently have done a few sort of trips catching up with friends and.
Did you head into Washington State as far as Walla
spent
Walla
a little bit
and
of time, and Seattle and Washington, and gone up to Vancouver as well. So the whole Pacific Northwest.
Did you go to the Okanagan?
No, I haven't been to the Okanagan.
I didn't get out. I really want to go to the Okanagan at some point. But I like Vancouver.
Yeah, Canada's a pretty cool place.
And obviously, Willamette, Elk Cove, and Beaufrere. Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir.
Did you kind of get connected with Pinot Noir in
a
big way?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That was kind of where it all started out. But I mean, anyone who's spent any time in Oregon and the Willamette will know how obsessive they are about Pinot.
Mm-hmm.
And more from the perspective of, that whole sort of integrated model of, being a vigneron and growing it and making it and blah, blah, blah. So, that obsessive nature of being a Pinophile, crazy.
At what point were you sort of tasting really extensively, like drinking wines from overseas and maybe wines from Australia, like to sort of really kind of hone your palate and find out maybe what kind of wine you wanted to make sort of further down the line?
Yeah, I guess, because I'd come from hospitality, there'd always been that exposure to drinking pretty broadly. And I had a great group of friends both in Christchurch and in Adelaide as well. And we just drank a lot. So that's kind of, and, you go to Oregon and they drink Burgundy. So, there's, have always been fortunate enough to have a pretty broad tasting exposure. So
So between those experiences in Oregon, where were you working as far as?
So I did my first vintage in Oregon, and then so that was 97, 98. Went to Cape Mentelle in Western Australia, and then after that,
was David Heinen still there?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And Mark Messenger and John Durham. And then went to Sicily to do a vintage there.
Really?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Just outside of Trapani on the west coast.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, which was
what
crazy.
Sort of led you there?
So that was working for a project that Kim Milne was operating through, I think it was called International Wine Services. But basically that whole sort of flying winemaker model of bringing in Aussies and New Zealanders to work in European wineries and make wine for the British supermarket chains.
Yeah.
So, it was pretty crazy. So that was playing around with the original Marsala variety, so Grillo, Greco, lots of Catarato as well, some Nero d'Avola, which was, so that was a little bit of Shiraz. I mean, obviously not indigenous to Sicily, but spent a lot of time out in the vineyards as well.
Did you enjoy being in Sicily?
Oh, it was amazing. I didn't learn that much about winemaking, I have to say, because it was all pretty straightforward, but learned a lot about, like, just culturally, food and wine, and put on about 10 kilo. All those cannoli.
All those long lunches.
Gelato and, long lunches. Oh, you mean we're starting off with pasta?
Yeah.
Right, there's another 3 courses to go.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
We haven't even got to the fish course yet. Oh, okay.
Yes.
And they bring out this big trolley of all these different pastries and desserts.
Oh, my God, so good. So good. I can taste them now. That was crazy. Yeah, and then after that, so after Sicily, went to Brokenwood and did vintage there in 99.
Wow.
And then ended up at Wirrawirra at the end of 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you there you were there for a while?
Yeah, 10 years.
Wow. Okay. So we're obviously, really, really possibly one of the most important producers in McLaren Vale.
Sure.
And, you got exposure to lots of different, from Willamette, Sicily, Margaret River, Hunter, and then 10 years in McLaren Vale. They're all pretty different.
Yeah.
Pretty different climates.
Absolutely.
Very different sort of soils and,
absolutely.
How did you kind of throw yourself into the Wirrawirra experience?
Well, I guess, what I'd learned up until that point, and because I'd had that broad exposure to, different climates, different microclimates, different soil types, different, varieties, everything, I just learned that there was no recipe for making wine. So you've just got to approach it. Each vintage is a completely new experience, and just appraise it from there and sort out from the point of tasting the grapes as to what you're going to do with them.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, it was I was really fortunate in terms of my position at Wirra. That was kind of when I first started there, that was like right in the boom of the Australian wine industry. So everything was going nuts. We couldn't make enough wine. Literally could not make enough wine. And then was there when it all started to get a little bit tough as well.
2008, 9.
Oh, earlier.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, sort of 2000 because it was the middle of the drought as well. So things started to. So 2004 onwards, everything started to get a little bit tough. So, have had experiences with a broad range of different conditions in terms of both making wine and selling it, because obviously working at Wirra, I was doing a lot of sales and marketing stuff as well.
Travelling into the markets and talking with trade and media, that kind of thing,
a lot,
So in most of those cases, it is sort of that, apart from maybe Alcove and Beaufrere, it's that combination of owning vineyards and, having your own fruit, but also having to buy some fruit in.
Sure.
How did you find the management of those two different elements of, fruit sourcing?
Yeah, it's a juggle. I was fortunate at where we dealt with obviously a pretty broad pool of growers, over 30 different growers. And a lot of that is risk management as well. Mm-hmm. So, you're controlling your own fruit source, and most of that is aimed at the top end, because obviously if you're controlling it, then you've got the resources to really be able to manage the vines according to how you want the fruit aimed at the wine styles that you're trying to make. And then with fruit that you're buying in, you're kind of spreading your risk as opposed to different locations and sites and different varieties and all of that kind of thing as well.
Give some options to blend and one vineyard might give you more acidity to sort of bring some freshness.
Yeah, and the beauty of the fact that I was at Wirra for such a long time was building that experience year after year of knowing how particular vineyards were going to react in particular seasons. So, and it's really hard to underestimate that, like just that knowledge base of year after year after year, knowing how a vineyard's going to perform. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Did you, at this stage, were you, having started in Willamette, with Pinot Noir and a bit of Chardonnay, and, Pinot Gris and Riesling, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, ending up at Wirra for so long, pretty different grape varieties.
Oh,
Shiraz,
yeah.
Grenache,
Yeah,
Cabernet
absolutely.
Sauvignon. How did you really enjoy working with the in that warmer climate with those varieties?
Well, I was lucky. Yeah, I mean, I love that style of Shiraz, and I think McLaren Vale is incredibly underrated in terms of its Cabernet Sauvignon as well. And Grenache at that point was still a hard sell, but I love those wines, and it's really only now, the last few years, that people have started to understand Grenache and what it's all about.
Yeah.
And particularly with people like Steve Pannell doing such an amazing job with those wines
Mm.
and really getting it out into the public in terms of what delicious food wines they are. So those warm climate styles certainly have, whilst it's probably not as close to my heart as cool climate styles, I still loved making them, still loved playing around with those styles. And particularly, watching the transition over the last few years in terms of, those big. Because when I first started at Where, it was all the Parker style, the high alcohol.
Fruit, alcohol,
and,
oak bombs.
Yeah, so watching that transition and how the producers have matured into a more savoury style, making things that are a little bit more textural, has just been fascinating over the last 10 years, I think.
So were you living in Adelaide and commuting out to Wirra?
No, I was living in McLaren Vale, so I lived in Wollonga.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Did you get into Adelaide much?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, it's only, 50 minutes away, so yeah, spent a fair amount of time in Adelaide.
And did you also have the opportunity to travel a little bit, visit other regions in Australia and
yeah,
sort of
well,
taste wines?
I guess we sourced fruit from the Adelaide Hills and the Barossa and around the place, so I travelled quite a lot. And I guess as well, I travelled a lot, as I said, doing sales and marketing stuff. So yeah, got out a fair bit.
And like going to other wine events and meeting other, winemakers from different regions. You got exposed to lots of different wines from around Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the fortunate thing at Wirra is that I had a fantastic boss, Tim James, who really became a huge mentor for me. Tim's is a highly experienced wine show judge and has got an incredible palate. So and there was a couple of others. Well, Julian Forward, who's now at Ministry of Clouds, he was sales and marketing manager at Wirra at the time as well. Andrew Tierney, who's at Torbreck, and all of those guys were passionate about wine, and both Andrew and Julian had come from Negotiants, and of course Wirra is distributed by Negotiants, so we absolutely plundered the Negotiants import list, it's fair to say.
When it comes to wine education and wine communication in Australia, there are a few names better known than James Halliday. James established Wine Companion many years ago to be a chronicle for Australian wines with ratings and reviews. That evolved into an amazing online resource which has lots of information about producers in Australia. And then a magazine which is now called Halliday. Halliday has articles written not just by James but also by a number of talented writers around Australia and even overseas. And as a special bonus to followers of this podcast, the guys at Halliday and Wine Companion have offered a fantastic 30% discount on any subscription package simply by entering at purchase the special code Intrepid30. So do go to winecompanion.com.au, have a look at some of the packages that they have, and look at getting one of those subscriptions, because it's a really great way to keep on top of everything that's happening in the wine world. So when you were sort of starting to finish up at Wirra, what did you sort of have an idea about what the next project or where you might want to work would be?
Look, not really. It was just kind of got to that point where I'd been at Wirra for 10 years, and I knew that if I didn't make a move soon, then, it was all just going to get a little bit too comfortable, I suppose. So I knew that I needed a new challenge. And that was when... So I kind of threw myself out there and actually resigned from Wirra before I had anything else to go on to.
Wow.
Sometimes you just got to chuck yourself into the abyss. But then an opportunity came up as winemaker manager at Tower Estate in the Hunter. So moved across to the Hunter. Yeah,
so back to the Hunter?
Yeah.
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 How did you, considering, it being arguably the most historic wine region in Australia. How did you find, going back to the Hunter, having worked for many years in the McLaren Vale?
It's such a different place. I mean, the Hunter's just, it's got a completely different skew from any other wine region that I've worked in, primarily because of the wine tourism, I guess, through there. There's over 1.3 overnight visitors, over 1.3 million overnight visitors each year. Like, it's massive. And that really completely changes the dynamic in the region. And then, of course, it's the Hunter. It's not the easiest place in the world to grow grapes.
Yeah.
Completely different from McLaren Vale. Very tight-knit community. Everyone's, very amazingly dedicated to making incredible wine. So, and obsessive about Semillon and Shiraz, obviously. So.
Yeah.
And Chardonnay now as well. Some terrific Chardonnays coming out from the Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. How many years were you back in?
So I was at Tower for a couple of years, and then I worked for the Australian Wine Research Institute for a couple of years as well.
Back in Adelaide?
No, based in the Hunter.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So managing a node for the AWRI, so it was kind of like a outreach program.
Did you have a particular area of focus?
We were working on about a handful of various sort of regional projects, I guess, looking at soil types and Semillon, for example. Really kind of my role was sort of to act as a conduit between that research and industry. So, it was a great job. But I started Stargazer in 2012 before I actually started with the AWRI. And then, when I finished up with the AWRI, just have been working for myself since then.
So tell me, when did the chrysalis of Stargazer start? When did you kind of have that idea about what kind of project you might want to have for yourself?
Yeah, well, it was kind of there was never really a plan, I suppose. I guess I'd always sort of thought about doing something for myself, but never really had the guts to do it until after I finished at Tower Estate and I did a vintage at Bay of Fires in 2012.
Yeah.
And Tower when I was at Tower, we'd been buying some fruit from Tasmania anyway.
Really?
So I've been coming backwards and forwards. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Was that your first exposure to Tasmania?
I'd had a couple of trips down here with Wirra as well.
To sell.
Yeah, just doing sales and marketing stuff. And then, started buying some fruit down here and spending more time in vineyards and just was like, this is pretty cool. This fruit's pretty awesome. 2012 got the opportunity.
Pretty
cool. Got the opportunity to buy some fruit and, whole 1.6 tonne of Pinot.
Mm-hmm.
Paid for it on my credit card because I had no money. That's how it all sort of started.
So you threw yourself into Pinot. Did you have a particular idea about how you wanted to express it? Drawing on your experiences, for example, in the Willamette Valley.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I love the Oregon style of those quite highly aromatic wines that have got those supple tannins, and that's the seduction in Pinot for me, is just those aromatics and getting the nose right.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the saying, get the nose right and everything else will follow, and that's pretty much how I approach Pinot.
Mm-hmm. So did you make it down here?
Yeah, I made it down here for the first couple of years. So I was going backwards and forwards a lot, building up those frequent flyer points. And then 2015, it was last year, wasn't it? Actually brought the fruit up to the Hunter and made the wines because I was living at that point right next door to Mike Deulius.
Mm-hmm.
So made the wines there simply because I didn't have enough time to come down to Tassie for vintage because I've been doing some consulting for a few other companies as well. And then, in February this year, bit the bullet and moved down.
And are you full-time with Stargazer?
Oh, well, I sort of, that's probably half and half, I guess. I'm still doing some consulting.
Okay.
To pay the bills. So, but Stargazer is going really well. So I do a Pinot Riesling Chardonnay and a Pinot Gris Gewürz Riesling blend as well. All of the wines from the most recent release have sold out a couple of months ago. And I just bought a little vineyard early this year as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
On your credit card?
No. My credit card limit doesn't quite, that would have maxed it out completely. No, I managed to con the bank into giving me some money. So, yeah.
So, as you added more wines, did you kind of feel like you had a philosophy across the whole range of different Stargazer wines? Were you taking a similar
Well, it was always
approach?
going to be about Chardonnay, Pinot, and Riesling. And then
It is Tasmania after all.
It is Tasmania, and they're the varieties that I love. So, and then the idea behind the Pinot Gris Gewürz Riesling was really to do something that was, making the most of those three different varieties. I love Gewürz, but I think, it can be quite overpowering as a single varietal. And that whole, I guess it almost goes back to my Wirra days in Church Block, and that whole idea of a blend being greater than the individual parts.
As opposed to, the
individual
so,
varieties. The Pinot Gris Gewürz Riesling, that sort of Gentil, Hugel Gentil model.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Something which is about a complete wine. So that's what I'm trying to do with that.
Well, in the same way that, you at Cape Mentel, they wouldn't just do 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. They'd blend in some Merlot and maybe, some Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc just to sort of round out the blend.
That's right.
And so, as far as the whites, how do you actually make those wines?
Well, all of my wines are wild ferment, and that's because I'm really trying to move away from wines which are out and out fruit bombs, to wines which are more savoury, have more texture, more about the feel on the palate rather than hitting you on the nose. So I'm happy to, and also because I think Tassie over delivers from a fruit perspective aromatically as well, so kind of taming that down a little bit and trying to get some secondaries in from the beginning, so to make the wines a little bit more toned down but really to focus on that textural element. So the Riesling is this year it's fermented in stainless steel. I've got a ceramic egg for the first time this year, and there's a little bit in oak as well. So, and they all look completely different. So, but a little bit of residual sugar, and that wild ferment kind of fills out the mid palate a little bit. So you kind of acts as a little bit of a bridge between the acid and the sugar. So, yeah.
Where have you been sourcing the fruit from? Which parts of Tasmania?
So predominantly from down south. So the Pinot up until now has been from the Huon Valley, Riesling from the Derwent, and Chardonnay from the Coal River, and the Pinot Gris and Gewürz is from the Tamar Valley up north.
How would you categorise those different parts of Tasmania?
Do
you feel that certain valleys are better for certain varieties, or do you think that they can all have the potential to produce great fruit from the different varieties, but just different?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Tasmania is still a relatively young wine region, and because there's the grape growing area is so small, there's only 1,600 hectares in Tasmania altogether. It's just tiny. So my feeling is very much that the best sites in Tassie are yet to be even planted.
Okay.
And that's what I'm driving around the Coal River Valley or whatever and just looking at these amazing slopes and going, oh my God, that would be incredible. So I think it's really there's almost not enough vineyard area to kind of be able to say categorically what's happening in each region. I mean, obviously we know that the Coal River and the Derwent Valley are drier than the Huon Valley, and Huon Valley's a bit later, and Tamar Valley, can be wetter as well. But I certainly, and I'm as I said, I'm in early days making wine down here. I don't have that history that I had in McLaren Vale, for instance, of years and years and years of vintages to be able to draw those conclusions just yet. But
well, there also isn't 100 plus years of winemaking.
Yeah, that's right.
History in Tasmania either. As far as just vine age, they're still only coming on to, 30, 40 years at most?
And a lot of those vines, as I said, I think the best vineyards are yet to be found, or are yet to be planted. But also, clonally wise, a lot of the early plantings were for both Chardonnay and Pinot clones for sparkling wine,
Right.
rather than serious table wine. So,
well, that's really interesting because for a long time, I and I'm sure most people would agree with me, have found that the absolute best sparkling base has been coming from Tasmania.
Oh, for sure.
But I've always found Tasmanian Chardonnay and Pinot Noir on the underwhelming side, not because it hasn't been good, but just because it tastes very similar.
Yeah.
Like I haven't really seen a lot of sub-regional diversity. Like I couldn't tell you what the difference between a Tamar and a Coal River Pinot Noir is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of always wondered, why is it so great for sparkling base, yet they can't seem to kind of get a really distinct expression of the table wines.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably
Well, I think
part of the reason.
I think clones is a large part of it. Vine age, vineyard site, winemaking as well. They're all areas that will only, I think, and that's the exciting thing for me. I think the best years of the Tassie wine industry are.
Do you think that there is
coming through now.
a big kind of revolution going, or there's a start of a revolution happening in Tasmania?
Absolutely.
A lot of people actually starting to make their own wines now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more people like me moving down here.
Yeah.
There's, obviously there's the big company investment, which has provided the basis for the triangle, I suppose, if you like. But yeah, there's so much good stuff happening down here that it's only going to mushroom, I think.
Do you think that there's going to be continue to be a burgeoning wine tourism industry?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I really see this place, and that's why I love, it's just been a revelation moving down here and just absolutely loving it. But it's just reminds me so much of New Zealand, and just that opportunity, not so much from a wine tourism, in conjunction with wine tourism, but with ecotourism as well. And then you've got the art side of it with Mona, and it's just
and as I've experienced this weekend, the dining scene, for example, is really vibrant.
Oh, it's off the charts.
Hobart,
just amazing food.
Yeah.
And so it all comes together from a cultural perspective. It's all going to come together, which is, fantastic.
And people, I think, I know people who live down here, who have moved down here. Clearly there's something about the quality of life down here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, for example, I can walk 5 minutes up the road and there's a fantastic reserve that's, got the most incredible views right out of Hobart, and it's right there. I can take my dog to the beach and it's, 10 minutes, I've got a selection of amazing dog beaches 10 minutes away from here. It's incredible. I can walk down to the farmer's market from my place on a Sunday and grab, a loaf of incredible sourdough. You can't do that. For me to be able to do that when I've been used to living in the boondocks for years and years, to have that quality of life, to have that accessibility, and yet the winery is only 20 minutes away and my vineyard's 30 minutes away. That just does not happen in any other wine region in Australia.
So tell me about this vineyard.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So it's only there's only a hectare planted at the moment. There's just over a hectare of olives.
Wow.
Which I've got no intention of learning anything about. So that's going to be basically leased out, I think. The idea was to kind of pull it out at the start, but I think I'll keep it in terms of, avoiding that monocultural situation. Biodiversity, exactly.
That's what the Italians do.
Yeah. 10 hectare block, some really great dirt, great northeastern exposure, water, which is important down here. So I'm just starting plans for planting some more at the moment.
So is northern exposure a lot more important in Tasmania? Because I know that, on the mainland, in a lot of cases, people sort of want to avoid a full, northern exposure because you might get burnt grapes.
Yeah. Well, I guess, obviously it's so much cooler down here. And so you need that northern exposure just to ensure that you're getting the right ripening periods.
What is currently planted and what are you thinking about planting?
So there's it's half Riesling, half Pinot at the moment. So I think there's probably about 4 hectares that are plantable. So I'm hoping to put in 2 hectares in 2017 because you've got to order the plant material now to get them in the ground in spring 2017. So I'll put in some more Riesling, I'll put in some Chardonnay, some more Pinot, obviously, so the clones that I really like. And then I want to put in some Pinot Blanc and some Gamay.
Gamay. Interesting.
I love Gamay.
Yeah, where did that love come from?
Just, I really like those medium-bodied styles of slurpy wines, you know. And, I mean, I've, always enjoyed Beaujolais when they're not bready. And I think some of the Gamays being produced in Australia now are pretty delicious.
Yes.
Yeah, Brian Martin's Ravensworth Gamay, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'm hoping to have Brian on very soon. Obviously, a Sorenberg Gamay.
Yeah.
But I had one from Tasmania last night.
The
at Willing Brothers.
Nevs.
No.
Domaine Simmer? No.
I think it is from that same vineyard though.
Okay. Two Bud Spur?
Yes.
Yeah, so Huon Valley.
Really interesting.
Yeah, okay, I haven't tried that.
Yeah, it had some nice sort of savoury edges to it, but eminently drinkable.
Yeah.
And finally, Stargazer. Tell me where that came from.
Oh, well, it's a funny story actually, because I went through hell and back trying to come up with the right name, and had various ideas, and obviously with having a degree in English literature, words are pretty important. And for one reason or another, they didn't work. It was already trademarked by someone else, or it just didn't work, or blah blah blah. So I rang up Paul Henry, who's a good mate. He used to be the general manager of marketing at Wine Australia, and is now runs his own company, Wine Hero.
Is it based over in the UK?
He's based in he's a POM, but he's based in Adelaide.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, great bloke. And he'd said to me years ago, if I can ever help you out, just give me a buzz. So I rang him up in a complete panic, going, I need to get this name sorted. And he rang me back 24 hours with Stargazer, because he's from Cornwall, and there's a fish in Cornwall called Stargazer. It's down here as well. It's kind of a deep sea whitefish.
Is it one of those ones with a light on their head?
Not the light, but it's like a flounder. Like it's only gotten it's a really ugly fish.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's why it goes down to the deep sea, because you wouldn't get any action further up.
Correct. And then the more I thought about it, the more perfect it was, because obviously, the idea was to try and bring me being a Kiwi and living in Tasmania together. And I only just discovered when I was doing some research that Abel Tasman actually discovered New Zealand and Tasmania on the same voyage, like within a week of each other. So Stargazer, navigating by the stars, compass, all that kind of thing, it all sort of started to come together. So, yeah.
I'm surprised that Molten Chandon hadn't trademarked it.
Stargazer?
Yeah. The whole thing about Dom Perignon, come quickly, I'm looking at the stars.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stars, yeah. But it's been... Because I always knew it. I mean, I'm not the sort of person to put my own name on the label. So I knew that I needed to absolutely nail the name, and Paul Henry came to the rescue, which was great.
But clearly the wines, if they're sold out, they've resonated with the customers. And I know that, a lot of great restaurants and wine bars just in Melbourne, speak very, very highly of the Stargazer. And it's part of, this changing perception of Tasmanian wine, that they can be, something a little bit more interesting coming out of Tasmania, rather than just, very same, but still reasonably good quality.
Yeah.
Particularly in terms of table wines. So, look, I'm excited to taste more of the Stargazer wines and see how they evolve and follow and particularly the vineyard.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be the exciting thing for me, is being able to control the fruit source. More exciting and terrifying, I have to say. Controlling the fruit source moving forward, and really getting my head around and getting to grips with the site.
I'm sure particularly that Weir experience will come in very handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam, thank you very much for making some time whilst I've been here in Hobart. If people would like to find out more information about Stargazer, could you just let them know about a website and maybe any social media accounts that you might have?
Yeah, sure. So I've pretty much got all of the social media covered. So at Stargazer Wine for Instagram and Twitter, and on Facebook as well, Stargazer Wine. And the website is www.stargazerwine.com.au.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, jump on the mailing list.
Yes, that's probably pretty handy considering the wine sell out reasonably quickly.
New releases in September.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again.
Pleasure. Thanks.
My sincerest thanks to Sam and to you, dear listeners, for enjoying this week's episode. I have been James Scaresbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. Of course, I would love for you to follow me on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find me at Intrepid Wino, but you can also follow the podcast on Twitter at the Vincast. Head to my YouTube page, also called Intrepid Wino, and you can check out some of my Let's Taste videos and some other videos, including my recent exploits with my first wine making experience of my own. Please do subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, or any other podcast hosting app. And if you do subscribe, it means you get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available, and it's a great way for you to share your appreciation by leaving a rating and review, which I really do appreciate. All the information, as always, is available at intrepidwino.com. I look forward to having you on a new episode next week, but until then, bye.